Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you've ever kept a goldfish, you definitely know that sudden panic of seeing your pet swimming sideways or maybe covered in these weird, mysterious white spots. Your immediate reaction is usually just to rush out, buy some random bottle of medication, and try to treat the sick fish. But today, we're completely shifting that paradigm. We are moving way beyond just treating the symptoms, and we're going to look at the systemic reasons why they actually get sick in the very first place.
So let's start with a provocative question. Why do goldfish really get sick? You know, there's this stubborn myth out there that the mere presence of a pathogen, a bacteria, a virus, whatever, automatically equals disease. But honestly, that's just not true. Aquarium water is basically a microscopic soup. It is absolutely teeming with potential pathogens, yet the fish aren't constantly dying. Why? Because disease isn't just an isolated event. It's a profound failure of balance. To really get this, we need to look under the hood of aquatic health.
And that brings us to our main framework today, the disease triangle. Think of this epidemiological framework as our ultimate medical detective toolkit. It tells us that clinical illness is an emergent property. It only happens when you have the complex, simultaneous interplay of three very specific things: a susceptible host, a virulent pathogen, and a permissive environment. If you break just one of those legs, the disease simply cannot manifest. So here is how we're going to break down this three-legged stool today. We'll look at Vertex 1, the host, Vertex 2, the pathogen, and Vertex 3, the environment. Then we'll wrap up with closing the disease triangle and managing the whole system. Let's jump right in. Starting right off with Vertex 1, the host. You see, a goldfish's genetic makeup and its physical anatomy directly dictates its baseline susceptibility to getting sick. Over a millennium of selective breeding has taken the goldfish pretty far from its wild crucian carp ancestors, and yeah, those changes come with a real biological cost. Take the common goldfish. Its streamlined body and single tail make it incredibly hardy. It can handle a massive range of temperatures because its genetics are still super close to wild carp. But contrast that with the Aranda, the lionhead, or the pearl scale. We've bred these fancy varieties to have these shortened, globular bodies and big head growths. Because of that shape, their internal organs are severely compacted. Their shortened body cavity means that if they get even slightly bloated, it presses right up against their swim bladder. Boom! They are suddenly highly susceptible to buoyancy issues, floating upside down, or sinking, just because their anatomy is mechanically compromised.
Moving right along to Vertex 2, the pathogen.
Like I mentioned earlier, aquarium water is basically never completely sterile. It's naturally teeming with microscopic organisms that are just waiting for a weak moment. These fall into four main classes. You've got viral agents like spring viremia of carp, which can trigger massive, terrifyingly fast die-offs. You have bacterial agents like Aeromonas and Flavobacterium, and these literally digest host tissue. Then you have parasitic agents, ranging from microscopic ick to big, highly visible anchor worms. And finally, fungal agents like Saprolegnia. Now, the absolute key takeaway here is this. Most of these bugs are highly opportunistic. They are perfectly happy just living harmlessly in the water or even right on the fish's skin, constantly testing the perimeter, just waiting for the host's natural defenses to drop.
Which brings us to the third leg, Vertex 3, the environment.
In aquatic medicine, the environment is the master mediator. I mean, it is everything. Because goldfish are cold-blooded. Literally, their entire physiology, from their heart rate to their immune system, is dictated by the surrounding water. There's this vital quote from the research. Temperature acts as a kinetic regulator for both the host and the pathogen. What does that mean in plain English? Well, warmer water speeds up a goldfish's metabolism, which is great for digestion. But simultaneously, warmer water hyper-accelerates pathogen replication. It's a high-stakes biological foot race. For example, the parasite that causes ick can complete its life cycle in 4 weeks at 21 degrees Celsius, but bump that to 26 degrees, it finishes it in just 5 days. It's a massive race between the bug's ability to multiply and the fish's immune system trying to respond.
Then there's the oxygen situation. Dissolved oxygen absolutely needs to stay above 5 milligrams per liter. If the environment becomes hypoxic, meaning it drops below that critical threshold, the fish goes into an acute stress response. It is physically forced to divert precious biological energy away from its immune system just to breathe and survive.
And honestly, the chemical environment might be the most dangerous factor of all. A healthy setup has 0 parts per million of ammonia, letting the fish maintain a totally intact slime coat, which is its first line of defense. But in a toxic environment, say ammonia spikes because of overfeeding or a broken filter, something horrifying happens. The ammonia physically burns the fish's gill tissue and causes that protective mucus layer to just slough right off. You are essentially stripping away the fish's armor while giving the pathogens a free VIP pass. Let's pull this all together in Section 4, Closing the Disease Triangle.
We've looked at the host, the pathogen, and the environment totally in isolation. But disease only actually happens when these three isolated pieces actively align and interact. Let's look at how this builds into a biological domino effect through stress-induced immunosuppression. Imagine your water quality tanks. That's an environmental failure. That poor water quality intensely stresses the fish out. The host's body responds by dumping the hormone cortisol straight into the bloodstream. Now, cortisol is a potent immunosuppressant. It actively suppresses the lymphocytes, forcing the immune shield to drop. And suddenly, those opportunistic pathogens in the water, the ones that were totally harmless a minute ago, they aggressively colonize the host.
A really tragic, common result of this closed triangle is saproligniasis, which most people just call cotton wool disease. Now, remember, this isn't just a random pathogen attack out of nowhere. This fungus is practically everywhere in aquatic environments, but it only gains a foothold because the fish is already compromised. That fuzzy cotton wool growth, that is the visible, undeniable proof that the host-environment equilibrium completely failed. The triangle has officially closed.
So how do we fix this? That's Section 5, Managing the Whole System.
We need actionable, holistic solutions here. If you focus only on the pathogen, like dumping medicine into a dirty tank, you're probably going to fail. We have to address the entire disease triangle all at once. The absolute most cost-effective way to manage this is biosecurity, specifically a professional 14-day quarantine protocol. When you get a new fish, you don't just drop it in your main tank. You place it in a separate hospital tank. Days 1 through 4, you're just observing, making sure it's eating and adapting. Days 5, 10, and 15, you hit it with targeted prophylactic treatments and vigorous aeration to knock out any stealthy parasites. And crucially, you pair this with aggressive water management, like 50 to 80% water changes to flush out toxins and bugs.
Now here's a real game changer. A simple therapeutic tool like aquarium salt or sodium chloride. It elegantly manages all three vertices of the triangle simultaneously. For the environment, salt actually blocks the gills from absorbing toxic nitrite. For the host, it provides what we call osmotic relief. Basically, the fish doesn't have to work as hard to maintain its internal water balance, and that frees up massive amounts of energy for its immune system. And for the pathogen, at specific therapeutic doses, salt induces fatal osmotic shock in external parasites like itch. It fixes the water, helps the fish, and kills the bug, the whole shebang, all at once.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. The next time you look at a goldfish tank, don't just look at the fish. Look at the water chemistry, consider the fish's anatomy, and really respect the microscopic life sharing that space. I want to leave you with this question. When problems inevitably arise, are you merely treating sick fish, or are you managing a healthy aquatic ecosystem? By keeping a rigorous focus on all three sides of the disease triangle, you instantly shift your mindset from a reactive pet owner to a highly proactive ecosystem manager. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.